Honest J. Nowak. Coming at you live. Alright.
A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more HJN Graphix. That's Graphix with an X, because why not? So, anyways, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about something different here. Something that I would certainly consider to be probably one of the best that we've ever had from Naughty Dog entirely. Episode number 811 will, in fact, circumnavigate around Naughty Dog's, at the time, latest Uncharted title, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. This game, I tell you, was just beyond awesome by any means. It had a lot of elements that you could possibly expect. The Uncharted series itself ran from 2007 to 2011 in line with the Michael Bay vs. Transformers films at the time, in which there were trilogies of those, 2007, 2009, and 2011. Between all three installments of the Uncharted series and all three installments of the Michael Bay vs. Transformers films, that's pretty much what we were able to get out of them. Just movies and video games from those series. I will say, though, that Uncharted, at least within its prime years and its earlier years at all, they were certainly pretty enjoyable. I was, in fact, able to play the Nathan Drake collection, and, well, believe it or not, I will pretty soon have a series dedicated to it. A new Gaming with Kaiju Force Neo series known as the Nathan Drake Triage, in which I play through the Nathan Drake collection. But of course, it's not necessarily going to be about the playthroughs of all three of those games, because the majority of the footage I'm going to be having taken over to various other GWK entries, like the 2-hour specials and leftovers, pretty much. So, and it's also because of the quantity of the episodes. 142 of them will pretty much be coming out soon. So stay tuned on November 4th, specifically for that. Until then, though, let's just say for sure that Uncharted 4: A Thief's End probably is the best that we've gotten out of the series thus far. It came out in 2016, and wow, does it really do a whole lot to give us as many possibilities as we could possibly uncover. The series itself had gone on a pretty long tangent. From the original trilogy itself to a few other unique titles itself. But for the main series itself, I was able to play Drake's Fortune, which was about uncovering the mysteries of El Dorado, which at the time was thought to be the lost city of gold, but in fact it was a large sort of idol that happens to possess the crap out of certain victims who were unfortunate enough to come across it. Then there was the second game, Among Thieves, in which it was mostly about Tibet, and the many things about Shambhala, or Shambhala, as some people would pronounce it. Then the third game came out, and it certainly centered on what the old tale of Lawrence of Arabia was pretty much like. The many treasures that centered around Arabia itself. And then, how do you feel like you'd probably follow up with all that? Well, you got part 4, which was in fact about Avery. Yeah, a pirate captain known by the name of Avery, whose ship has in fact been stricken with a huge amount of gold and riches of all sorts. Any conquistador who would dare to solve the many puzzles and mysteries that would take place would in fact be honored with all of these treasures and the like that were pretty much there. And well, the thing is though, is that the main complication within this title is that Nathan Drake practically retired from the sport of tomb raiding and exploration. Exploring the Uncharted was something of the past at the time, and Drake, of course, wasn't suited to try and living a normal life with Elaine Fisher. But, of course, duty pretty much calls, as Drake was in fact working with a marine company of all sorts, and was practically falling behind in certain ways that you could potentially look at it. And the main thing, of course, that really centers on this one apart from the others is the fact that it also brings along a somewhat new character, but one who was canonically present in the entire series, and we just never saw this person. I'm, of course, talking about the elder sibling of Nathan Drake, Samuel Drake. Of course, I will say for sure that this is certainly quite a nice inclusion. To have an elder sibling go alongside the younger sibling by any means was certainly quite a nice touch that they brought along to it. It's a lot like with most other franchises, in which a later sequel would of course have the long lost sort of thing where an elder sibling finally comes along into the franchise after being long dormant and we've never seen this character before. But of course there was a reason for this. During the earlier portions of Uncharted 4, we get to see some flashback scenes take place. The opening scene at first gives us a nice glimpse where Samuel and Nathan are on a boat heading towards the island where Avery's ship is, and then of course it cuts over to a flashback scene. A flashback where Nathan is young and living in an orphanage, determined to escape and try to find a lot of lost art of any sort, including both parents. Their house of course is owned by somebody else, but that doesn't stop Nathan Drake from escaping the orphanage along with Samuel on board a motorbike, and they both head over to their old house where they end up finding a long journal. And that of course was pretty much what eventually led to the Morgans eventually adopting the name Drake as their surnames. Then eventually we get another bit of a flashback scene. One that I had no idea would actually begin to take place right here. But what happens is that this is practically before the events of the original trilogy, where Nathan and Sam, along with Rafe Adler, they're both stranded in prison on an island pretty much, and they have to try and find a way to escape. And by the time they do so, Rafe and Nathan manage to make it out, but Samuel unfortunately gets left behind and is thought to be dead by that point. But then flash forward to the present, where of course we see Nathan doing a little diving job for the marine company in the present day. Samuel Drake eventually is found in prison and then gets broken out. But this of course comes at a cost. These so-called liberators who free Samuel from the prison have to pretty much double-cross this poor guy and force Samuel to try and find the treasure of Avery's shipwreck. Samuel, of course, knows the only person who, of course, could help. The younger sibling out there, Nathan Drake. So Samuel, of course, goes to a long way to try and find Nathan. And by the time they both meet up, there are a lot of things going around that almost seem confusing. But man, that's just probably the beginning of the amazing action that takes place. Samuel and Nathan eventually both agree to head on out over to various locations throughout the world as a way to find the clues and solve the puzzles of Henry Avery and eventually find the treasure to the shipwreck out there. And by the time they manage to do so, Nathan, Samuel, as well as Victor Sullivan, whom of course has accompanied Nathan on the many other journeys that had taken place to find treasure and whatnot, they eventually do in fact come along the biggest clue, the biggest part of the mystery that would eventually become solved. That of course would pretty much give us right back to that opening scene, which of course served as the prologue to the game itself, where they're on a speedboat and they go over to this island where of course they're able to go ahead and find the biggest parts of the entire puzzle in order to basically get to the treasure itself.